Order. We have a quorum. We're called to order. And the next item is approval of the agenda. Would anybody like to make any adjustments to the agenda? And I'll start, if that's okay. Sherry?
Yes, we're going to have tallies under lake utilization.
Thank you so much.
Amended diagram or verification of diagram.
Okay. Any other?
Is everything in here on the agenda?
So,
Packet 1 had everything for you. However, things have been moving really quickly. Today I got more documents, so half of those documents are in Board Packet 2.
Which is this?
Right.
Additions to that, yes.
Yeah, I'm just seeing some new information. Is that stuff on
It's
the
all,
agenda?
Packet 2 is new information. So if
I'll
I
make
have...
a motion to add packet 2 somewhere on the agenda. Where would you like it?
I think it's...
Or is it on here?
Yeah, I think the first, the first diagram, the letters from the attorney,
Letters from the DNR.
ADUA stuff, right? The
Yeah.
letter from the thank you, the DNR is in here. So I will add that letter to new business.
Okay.
And then Docks of White Bear, that update is already on the LUC, and I think that covers Board Packet 2, other than it also includes the budget information and then the 2024 budget planning information.
Okay.
So I think we have everything on the agenda. So the items were a DNR letter that's been put under new business, and then Tally's amended diagram that's under the Lake Utilization Committee. Any other adjustments to the agenda? Okay, would anybody like to make a motion to approve the agenda?
Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Passes. Thank you. Next item, approval of the April board meeting minutes. Does anybody have any adjustments that they would think appropriate to those minutes? Okay. Would anybody like to make a motion to approve the April meeting minutes?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes. Public comments. We reserve 15 minutes on the agenda for items that are not on the agenda. Is anybody here to talk about any items that are not on the agenda?
I'd like to speak to something
As a community member?
as a community member.
Would you mind going out there?
Not at all.
Susie, thank you. And name and address,
You
please.
bet. Susan Mahoney, 479 Lake Avenue, Birchwood, Minnesota. And I am coming before you to talk about my ADUA. I know in the last year or year and a half, we've discussed Luke Michaud's at length about people abusing his ADUA. I have a neighbor who cannot stay out of my ADUA, and I would like to have something happen regarding that. I have two packages of pictures. Sorry, I don't have any more. I'm a conservationist. I can't stand paper. So that package shows on top, one of them has a picture of our home and the docks that I'm talking about. The other has just the docks set up, an aerial view. We had a drone come in and take some pictures of our dock and our neighbor's dock. And we have had ongoing problems with the people to the south of us. They use our ADUA in a 2017 notification to us, made us move our dock in 20 feet. That's still our ADUA. They seem to think that it's their ADUA, and they use it repeatedly. If you look, you can see them entering, exiting They are approximately 8 feet from my dock. I have 20 feet of ADUA there. They don't seem to be able to make a 90-degree angle to get their pontoon boat in. Their dock is 18 feet over from the property line. It's 1.5 feet, or 3 feet, so 1.5 feet would be on our side. They have an 8-foot extension at the end of their dock, which makes that a 9.5-foot extension. They have an 8-foot pontoon boat, 8 foot wide, that of course doesn't work. So they're always on our ADUA. Their son parks his boat on one of those, what do they call those things? The big spheres?
The buoy.
Thank you. For some reason, it was like rain. Yeah, a buoy that is not in front of their dock. It is between their dock and our dock. So, of course, it's always in our ADUA as well. He's oftentimes, and one of the pictures in there shows it, 4 feet from our dock, again, using our ADUA. They have people coming in and exiting, both on the pontoon boat and on other people's jet skis in our ADUA. We have had multiple legal problems. We don't want to encounter any more legal problems with them. We don't want to have any liabilities in our ADUA. And I know when you guys looked at Luke Michaud's problem, they were barely into his ADUA. I'm talking about 16 feet into my ADUA on a repetitive basis. I would really like it to be understood that they don't have enough footage to get their boats out without coming into my ADUA. And I think the only way to resolve the problem is to have them move their dock over to the south at least 8 feet. They have 36 feet on the lake, so they would still have 10 feet from their property line in their ADUA to have a speedboat, their dock, their pontoon boat, and then they would have adequate footage to get their boat out. And I'd like to see that happen this year. Before, and I'm coming tonight, I meant to get on the schedule and I forgot about it, but they haven't put in their dock yet. And we've had to move our dock in August to accommodate their feeling that we were going towards their dock in the past. I don't want to make anybody do double the work. I would like to see them put it in so that they're not going to have this ongoing problem and continually be in our ADUA. I'd like to see you guys treat this as you did Luke Michaud's ADUA problem and take care of the problem, because I'm just tired of my ADUA being abused. I'd also like to have my kayaks put on the south side of my dock, which in the past you have not allowed us to put anything on the south side of our dock because we chose to put our dock not in the center but to the south of our we have an ADUA of 64 feet. But we have 3 grandchildren, and that extra lift is taking space that they could use in the 40 feet that we have, 40 feet that we have for our grandchildren to play in. And so I'd like to be able to move my kayaks to the south side of my dock. I'd like to have the Harrods move their dock over 8 feet to accommodate their entrance and exiting at all times. Any questions?
Yeah, just a question for the LUC. Could somebody from the LUC check into this?
Yeah, we can even get some details after. I'm not following all the dimensions, but we can get that written up and just kind of just based on what this is, and we can see what we can come up with.
Yeah, we'll need to see something more to that.
Yeah, so maybe
Something like,
An engineer drawing into the water with measurements.
Well, we have in that.
That wasn't required when I had to move my dock the last time.
and it's more for our education, like probably me too. Like here, Keith just did this one for tallies, just like understanding what are those buffer
Well,
zones.
if you look at the first page on one and the second page on another, it shows the docks from a drone perspective.
Yeah, I don't know what those distances are.
Well, as I said, they have an 18 feet is the center of their ADUA. They have 1.5 feet on my side for their dock.
And I'm not trying to be confrontational. I just want to know.
No, I'm not either. I'm just trying to explain it.
If we know what the distances are, and I guess we could try to go out and measure too, if Deb lets us.
I don't think the measurements would be of that much of an interest because the thing that is the problem is they are constantly in my ADUA. They have enough space, they just don't choose to use it.
So can someone from the LUC check into that and then come back to the June meeting and let us know what's what there?
Sure.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Susie.
And I prefer an unbiased person looking at that.
Well, I think we have 3 very qualified, unbiased LUC
Well,
members.
last time, Brian, when we had this problem and we were converging barely a foot onto their area, we spent a great deal of money having to move our dock. There was no drawings. There was nothing. It was just their word against ours. And the person who looked at that and went out there agreed with it. It was like, this is so straightforward. So I guess I would like to have the same respect given to me that Luke Michaud has gotten in his ADUA concerns, where people are barely getting into it. I'm talking about 16 feet into my ADUA.
Yeah. And
This is not a slight amount of...
Yeah, and I have to apologize. I do not remember us spending all the time on Luke Michaud's ADUA, but maybe my memory just
You
isn't.
talk at length about it for some
Okay.
time.
All right, well, somebody
We'll
will
take it.
check
We'll be
into it.
unbiased. We'll do our best.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Susie. Okay, anybody else? Okay, moving on.
Yeah.
New business. Introduction of DNR. Excuse me.
We've got to move on to the next
Thanks.
one.
Introduction of DNR Conservation Officer Matthew Pavola. Alan? Yeah.
Needless to say, with everything we have going on, we just need to keep rolling.
Yeah, that sounds
We'll
good.
get them next month.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's a good idea, but agreed. Yep. Okay. White Bear Lake fireworks donation. Mike?
Same thing. We got a letter from the White Bear Lakes Fireworks Committee thanking us for a donation last year we made of $100, and we also don't charge them $60 for the permit, so it's net $160. And they're asking for a donation again this year, so I'll make a motion that we donate $100 to the White Bear Lake Fireworks Fund.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to donate $100 to the White Bear Lake Fireworks Fund. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes. Thank you, Mike. Proposed bylaw amendment to Section 6, Control of Funds, Number 4, Audit, first reading. Mike Pronto.
Excuse me. We've been doing an audit, hiring a company to do an audit every 3 years, and one of their recommendations was that we don't have a very complicated book system, so once every 5 years would be plenty sufficient. We would need to change our bylaws to do that, so we have a proposed change, and this would be the first reading, and I guess I'll read it. Proposed change to Section 6-4 reads as follows. The directors shall serve as an audit committee. Every 5 years, the district shall engage an outside agency firm to perform a full audit of the district's financials for accuracy, completeness, adherence to standard accounting principles. The results of such audit shall be presented to the board once voted and accepted, and shall be transmitted to the individual lake cities. So it just changes it from 3 years to 5 years. So that's the first reading, and then Alan, what happens after that?
A second reading. And then we would end up just publishing it in the local paper. And
Okay.
it would be valid essentially as soon as it got published.
Can we do first and second reading on this at the same meeting, or should we wait till June?
You can waive second. There's nothing in state law that requires you to actually have 2 readings. Most folks do in case there's edits or the public wants to comment on it. This seems more housekeeping related, sort of back office stuff, so you could certainly direct it to be published after tonight. Just waive second reading as a separate motion.
Yeah, I'm inclined to have a second reading in June, give anybody out there that would like to comment a chance to do that.
No
It's
rush
not
to-
something
yeah, there's
that...
no rush to change
Yeah,
it.
true.
Yeah, there's no hurry, I don't think.
Okay, can you put that on the... Thank you. Okay, is that it for that item, Mike?
So you want to move it, though, right?
So do we make a motion?
Move first reading.
Okay.
Set it up for second.
I move we accept the first reading.
Yep.
Second?
Second to accept the first reading. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That passes. Thank you, Mike. Next item on the agenda is the DNR letter, and I'll just take this. So the DNR had requested that the board let them know what's going on with the number of slips in Commercial Bay. And so we complied and sent them that, and then we received a letter that's in your board packet there from the DNR that I think basically says that Docks of White Bear, the DNR intends to adjust the DNR permit for Docks of White Bear to 240 slips. And that letter's in your packet. Okay. Can you keep it focused for us? Thanks, Brian.
I got the letter yesterday,
Yep.
or was it 2 days ago? It was 1 or 2 days ago, and we plan on contesting that.
Yeah,
Thank
understood. Thanks, Brian.
It's pretty short.
Yeah, thank you for that. Okay, and I think that's it for that item, unless anybody has any discussion or wants to have any discussion on that. Okay, we'll move on. Unfinished business, Commercial Bay, so dock installation process update. Mark, what do you have for us?
Well, Chris and I went down there last weekend. I haven't really gone down there in the last couple days, but last I saw, the city is still working on, they took a lot of damage on their docks this winter again. So they're working on repairing those, and everybody else has their docks out.
Okay, thank you. Next item is VFW expansion and the EAW. And Alan, can you talk to us about that?
Yes. If everyone recalls this conversation, it's over the expansion of the VFW's situation. So they want to add some docks. And the question is whether or not that's going to trigger an environmental assessment worksheet, which is sort of the shorthand version of an EIS. And after interviewing Mr. Scollin at the DNR, basically I said, how do you do it when you have to evaluate these marinas? And there's a couple of ways to do it. One is just to measure, if you will, the box where the slips are, and that gets you one number. And then by the other analysis, you go outside of that, because in the statute, it actually, or in the rule, it's actually a Minnesota rule, the rule says essentially, and the area around it that is required to navigate. And so the DNR basically says that's a dock length or a boat length rather than a half, in addition to the actual slip and the structure. So that would put us, I think the last time we measured this last month, that would put them at about 30,000 squares. And so the board should definitely tell the applicant, the VFW, that they're going to have to at least do the worksheet. You know, and those are not hard. I think I sent a worksheet copy around so everyone could get a sense of what that is. So it's just asking all the right questions. But it's my analysis anyway, and I think the DNR would concur that they definitely need to do one for this as part of their process to go through.
Okay, and is that something we can have Sherry just notify them that an EAW is required, or do we need to vote?
I think so. I think it's appropriate to put it on our letterhead and say, we are going to require this. Copy the DNR, of course, because that was their question to us. Are you going to trigger that? So, yes, we are.
Is there any board action required other than that?
I guess you could take a vote to authorize Sherry to do that if you want to do, just to memorialize it.
I'll make a motion to have Sherry write a letter to the VFW notifying them that they need to prepare an EAW for their dock expansion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I think we should just be consistent with it going forward. Then, if we do it for this, we got to do it for everybody, right? If
the rule is
others, just in the sense of, you know, whether the rules are the rules, I think that there is some value of doing the study if people want to expand, right?
There's absolutely nothing wrong with doing that out of abundance of caution. The rule is triggered at the 20,000 square foot.
Yeah, that point. Whatever the math equation was.
Yep. But it doesn't mean that you can't ask for one just in general.
Yeah.
So, and the only place you ever do that is when there's a DNR permit. And so I think if this goes through, there's not much more room in that bay for anyone to expand at all. So it might be the last gasp in terms of expansion.
Okay. And I think Tally's prepared an EAW when they expanded. Am I right, Keith?
That is correct.
And I think that Docs maybe started one, but I don't know if it was ever completed. Was it completed?
Yes.
Okay, so we have been requiring that. Okay, so that's any, okay, so we had a motion, we had a second. Did we vote on it?
No.
Okay, any more discussion? Okay, I'll call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes. Docks of White Bear Lake and City of White Bear Lake Lions Park ADUA boundary. That's me. So I'll just kind of set this up. I think everybody's aware that in Commercial Bay, where Docks of White Bear, and is it tract property or is it Docks of White Bear Lake? What's more appropriate?
White Bear Shopping Center, the track.
Okay.
I'm a tenant.
Okay.
Just like Kowalski's is or Wells Fargo.
Okay, so this line between the tract property and the city's Lions Park, historically, I would say that Docks of White Bear Lake has self-defined their ADUA as going towards the middle of the lake. And, you know, as a board, historically, we've been reactive. And in this situation, that's the way it's been for a bit. And the city would like to take or get better use of their ADUA. And so they have requested that ADUA boundary between those two properties be defined in a different way than just than going to the middle of the lake. They've offered up a proposal, which is in your board packet. Actually, it's the most recent is at the front of this packet that was handed out tonight. And you can see that basically what the city is proposing is to go perpendicular from the shoreline there. And that would give the city better access to use their ADUA out of Lions Park. Obviously, that impacts the ADUA that Docks of White Bear Lake has been using in the past. The board, well, I don't know if it was the board. I think at our last meeting, we made the decision to try to get the two parties together. So we tried several attempts, and unfortunately, Docks of White Bear couldn't make any of those work. And then,
We had an attorney meet with the city.
oh no, I'm getting to that, Brian. So we tried to set this meeting up between the city and Docks of White Bear Lake and some members of the Conservation District Board, but Docks of White Bear couldn't send a representative, or Mr. McGoldrick wasn't available, so those meetings didn't happen. But then kind of last hour, Docks of White Bear, or I guess it's Tract Properties, maybe hired some more attorneys, and they had a discussion with the city. And as best I can tell, the two parties have not come to an agreement on what that ADUA line should look like. Is that fair? And yeah.
And we're continuing to work on it.
Yeah, so they haven't come to a decision. So it's up to the board. Typically, the board defines the ADUA, and in these difficult situations, just like we've done in other areas of the lake, and so it's up to the board to make a decision as to what that ADUA line should look like between those two properties. And I guess what I would like is if we can just have some discussion about that. And what do folks think?
Can maybe I get a better understanding of what are the big concerns that the city has? So, let's say where the center of the lake was. What were the big problems there?
Lindy, would you like to come up and talk to that point?
Just to let you know, the microphone doesn't work right.
Okay, so here's the deal with this microphone, is that it's being picked up by the recording, but it's not coming out in the room, so fortunately there's not many of us and we're close. So will you just let us know your name and
Yes.
who you're representing?
Chair, board, thanks for having me. Lindy Crawford, City Manager, City of White Bear Lake. I usually sit right there where Meredith sits. So I was here last November when we talked about our permits, and it was very crystal clear. City, you may not encroach on any ADUA on your marina. You may not encroach, or Tally's, your tenant, my tenant, may not encroach on the Whitaker Street end. At that time, it was also stated, Docks of White Bear, you may not encroach on the city's Lions Park ADUA. Since that time, there's been these surveys floating around of what is the ADUA, what are these lines. I'm not certain, I wasn't here at the last meeting, I was at my own meeting. I'm not certain if a line was distinguished, was picked, and so it was, two parties, let's meet, let's discuss this, let's get something to work out on our own, as property owners should do. As Brian said, we've been trying to do that. We do not have an agreement as of today.
I guess back to my question, what were the problems?
Yeah, thank you. I'm getting to that. That is the problem, is that we've been told, do not encroach on any ADUA, yet others can encroach on our ADUA. I understand traditionally they have been, and I'm willing, as the property owner, to allow them to encroach some, because I'm not looking to put more docks there. But as the property owner and as a public park, that should be used for the public.
Yeah, and I guess there's never been an ADUA truly defined. You got to remember our survey is just data to give us guidance and direction. So that's where I was like, did something happen where somebody backed a boat up over somebody's fishing line, or did anything to cause problems at that Lions Park, or is it just encroaching on the ADUA that's not defined yet?
Well, with the two dashed lines, I tried to overlay. I'm not a surveyor, but I tried to overlay both of the proposed ADUA lines on one document, which are the dashed lines. So it significantly, it depends on where this board is going to place the ADUA lines, which is why I tried to come to some sort of middle ground, allowing him to encroach a little bit more if it were that straight line.
As opposed to your wire fence line is yours, right?
Right.
The line with the X's in it is the proposal by the city. As you can see, proposed by city.
Yep.
And that's where they would propose that the ADUA boundary is.
But I didn't understand. You're saying the straight line would be...
The straight line would go up and would take out most of Docks of White Bear Lake.
That's there's...
On the left.
Yeah, that's thrown out, though. We would never use that because property lines don't define the ADUA either, right?
Right. That, in my opinion, that wouldn't be fair.
Right. We came to the... Okay, but there hasn't been anything that's been drastic, somebody got hurt or anything else in that bay.
No, docks have been placed in our ADUA for several winters. I'm not saying they were recently. I'm just saying, as a property owner, as you just heard from one of your board members, others are using their ADUA. I want to be able to use my ADUA for public property.
I hope is our neighbors figure it out and based on some issue, but that's fine. Yeah, I get it. I was just asking if what problems were there.
Yeah, and one thing I would add...
I guess I'm trying to be proactive versus have a problem come. Get this all straightened out. As we're looking at all of the other ADUAs, it seems like Lions Park has just traditionally been forgotten about. So I'd like to have an agreement between two property owners if we can do that.
Yeah, and one thing I would add is if you go down and look at it, if somebody launches a kayak or a canoe from Lions Park, they have to go out around Docks of White Bear Lake's docks, and it just seems burdensome.
Right.
And I, personally, I agree with the city that just because a marina owner has been using your ADUA doesn't mean that they should be allowed to do that going forward. So I think, the question is, can the two parties work out some sort of an agreement?
And if I could just add, the city does not wish to impede on anyone's private business whatsoever. I'd issued a letter to the board, and I don't know if you've seen that or if it's in your packet, but that's not our wish whatsoever at all, ever. I want every business in our community to succeed. I just want to be able to use our public park for public purposes to the best that I can, while still allowing him to conduct private business in my ADUA.
Yeah. And one other thing I'll add is, it looks like it takes off a section of the Docks of White Bear docks there. But I wonder
if those docks are currently out there. I don't know if that's the current configuration. I have no idea.
Yeah. But once Docks of White Bear Lake brings it down to the 240 slips, maybe that portion of it goes away. I don't know. Okay, so any other, Meredith, thanks.
How does the city define the use of that park? I know you store some canoes and kayaks there. Do you have anything about the park, how you'd like to use the park?
How it's currently being used right now is how we would like it to be used for right now. I don't have our park plan in front of me, but we do have kayak and canoe rentals that, I mean, people have little spots there that they can use. And even if it's not used, people should be able to look out and not see private boats.
Yeah, there's also a fishing dock there.
Yeah.
And they would certainly appreciate being able to look at the lake.
Right.
You know, because I think part of the value here is just the sight lines.
Right.
It's, you know, it
But anywhere in that bay, you're going to see a boat.
Yeah.
That's like
This is an urban lake.
We're not. It's not a like. Does this look good or not? I mean, I get it, but it's like it's a marina bay. It's a commercial bay. To me.
Yeah. Any other, Mike?
I think if you go to a public park, you should have the quiet enjoyment of the lake. That's, excuse me, why you go there. Not to look at the back of boats, but I think something should be fair that's done, and it should be fair for both. And I think the perpendicular line is fair for both because White Bear Docks has shown us a dock scheme where he respects that line. And although the docks are still a little bit long, he can get and for 260 boats. So I think that there's still room with that perpendicular line enforced for the docks of White Bear to still do business, still do the regular business that they do, and for the city to enjoy, to have use of the park for the way it's intended for people to enjoy the lake, be able to see out a little bit better out into the lake. So I think the perpendicular line is the most logical and fairest answer to the problem.
I have one question. As I look to the south, that dock, it's a private dock. It's all the way in your ADUA.
Then let's address that too.
I mean, it's all the way in your ADUA.
Let's go him.
And it sticks out pretty far.
Yeah.
Because it's all swamp.
Who's that guy?
Yeah.
But,
I think that's the Cottage Park Homeowners Association.
no, they're around the corner.
They're around the corner.
You know, so that dock is an issue as well. Any other discussion?
Yeah, following up on Mike's comment, what is the history of this second drawing that's about 8 pages into the packet? Is that something that Docks of White Bear Lake produced and proposing? Or?
We were hoping, I think that was the one Brian had sent. We were thinking if we got some of the LUC stuff figured out, this could have been a proposal of that, since we can't figure out what the ADUA line is yet. On the other side, this is maybe for reference later. We had hopes that we'd have something for the board to review. We don't right now.
Who produced it, and who is
Brian did, but we had multiple versions. Like we don't have a final one,
And they're all for 260 slips. And we've only ever allowed 240. And so so it's difficult to, I think, look at this and figure out where the ADUA lines are. And then also the other thing is, I think, like we mentioned, Docks White Bear has been self-defining their ADUA as going towards the center of the lake. So this line here, these sets of docks here they would cross over the ADUA that belongs to Whitaker Street. Brian?
Brian McGoldrick, 36 Moonlight Bay. I just want to say we did hire an attorney because I don't understand this stuff. You know, we want to be fair, but you know, that the line that we feel is right is the one that's been used historically. Now, that's not saying there's no movement. We've hired a very good attorney who plans on continuing working with Lindy, and we've already, if the drawing that you were referencing, there was 2 surveys. You know, that was unusual for me. Usually just pay for one. One survey was going off of the property lines. The other survey was going to the midpoint of the lake. So if you looked at the one survey, it was frustrating for me because we're acquiescing on the far end with an agreement that we made with the LUC because it would have screwed up everybody's dock going down. If you go straight out from the property, not that one, but if you go straight out to the property, the city's docks have to move over, Tallies has to move over, all of them do. And we said, you know what, we can make it work at the end of the street. We're hoping that we can come up with some kind of compromise with the city where it doesn't take out the docks. It should be important to note that hopefully someday we'll address that bay because the muck is so bad it's dangerous. I mean, nobody swims down there. Most of the canoe people, we have them go off our boat launch because you step 2-3 feet off there, you're waist deep in muck. Mike knows all about that stuff. So I want to continue to work with Lindy. I mean, but nobody does more, I think, for the commercial bay than the Track family. They could tow 200 cars every week, and all of us know it. And, you know, you're going to be taken from him, not taken from me. You know, he's the owner, he's the property owner, not me. But we're continuing to work hard, and I think that Lindy and I can come up with something with the attorney.
Can I pose a question?
Darren, yeah.
Alan, is there such thing as adverse possession in this case? And if so, what's the time frame for that?
I would say no, because adverse possession is for land, not necessarily the water's public. So the ADUA is an artificial construct that we put in place. It's kind of a zone of exclusion, which is how it's being used here. But there's a pattern in use. There's all kinds of arguments that I'm sure that the docks or the Track family will bring up to justify keeping the status quo the way it's been. But no, they can't adversely possess this and create a property right in an ADUA like this. So
thanks.
You're going to be left picking a line and just tell them that that's what it is. And if they come up with an agreement that's different, then good for them.
Yeah. Actually, a question for council, because we got this letter today, dated today, from the lawyers for Docks of White Bear. And there's quite a bit of stuff here about how, they essentially saying we're not following our own ordinances and process. And I'm not a lawyer and I can't interpret this. So, and we only got it today. I'm wondering what our council interpretation
I don't know
of
if
this
any of
is.
you did. Everyone got it anyway. And reading between the lines, it appears as if the statement is made that there hasn't been a complaint, so we're not in a procedural posture to make a decision. And I would say that the city has complained, and that's why we're talking about it. So I'd say we're well within our right to deal with it, just like we've got a new complaint from, happens to be a board member, but that's how this board has traditionally viewed these things. And so we've been talking about it since last fall.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, you know, the first paragraph is, you know, the issue, I first note that this issue is not properly before the board under the district's ordinances. Those ordinances provide that the board is to define the ADUA for a multiple user dock as part of the license from the board. The board did not define the ADUA for Docks of White Bear Lake at their November 22nd meeting, at which it approved this year's license for Docks of White Bear. Well, that's obviously an error because they have no license to operate in White Bear Lake from the White Bear Lake Conservation District. So that's just a misunderstanding on the part of the writer of the letter, in my opinion. Yeah, so I think we are at a point where the board needs to make a decision on this ADUA line, and I think that it seems like now is the time to do that because the docks are just going in, the boats are just going in, and the longer we wait, the more that'll get entrenched for the season. And so it seems like the board ought to make a decision on this ADUA line.
Do you think we can wrap something up, Lindy? I'd like to continue to work.
Yeah, and I understand.
We just have to time box it. Like, I think we need like something soon.
Brian,
like, just like here's what I would. My suggestion is probably sooner than that. But we have diagrams. You have these proposed lines. We know what the numbers are. Can you fit them in there? If you can't fit them in there, then you work with the city to say, hey, can we shift it this way or that way to hit my number? That would be my suggestion. I would imagine you guys would work to each other to hit that. Huh? I would hope.
Darren?
We've been trying for the last 30 days, Brian.
Yep.
But something has, some,
You got to commit to getting something done.
So if there is a violation, will the violation go to Ron or you?
So if we could just wait to be called upon when you have something to say, that would be ideal. Darren?
Brian, I agree completely with your suggestion that we need to make a decision. A complaint was surfaced 6 months ago. It's been 6 months. We've been begging for additional information from the other party for 5.5 months. We've received very little. I think it's in our best interest as a governing body to make a decision tonight. If the property owners can come to a decision tomorrow, great. But I'm in favor of drawing the line tonight.
Yeah, so, I'll make a motion that we accept this line proposed by the city that kind of splits the difference. That's my motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Now for discussion.
I think we're being hasty on it.
Yeah, so it's a motion and a second. Excuse me, Brian. Yeah, excuse me. But, to what we've already said, if we make this motion and we pass it, the two parties come to some other agreement that's amenable to both parties, and they bring that to us, of course, we can adjust that decision.
Can we amend the motion to say, would we give it a time box of 7 days?
It's okay, so let's talk through that. So if we do that, and within the 7-day period, they come back to, who would they come back to? Would they come back to Sherry and say, hey, we've come to this decision and we're both in agreement with it? So what happens then? I mean, the board doesn't meet till June.
Right, but I think, well, I don't know. I think the LUC could look at it and see if it fits in to what we have for the numbers and everything else.
Brian?
Go ahead.
No.
Perhaps this is really a good time for sort of a triggering event. So it's effective, say, in 7 days, 10 days. Give them a chance to do this. So if they don't present an agreement to Sherry that she can send around, I don't think it's something that we necessarily have to ratify if it's their agreement, right? And so if we don't see that within the next 10 days, then whatever you vote on that line becomes the rule.
I'm open to that. Well, I will adjust the
box that Chris, I think, was suggesting.
Yeah, okay, Mike?
I think that we've been asked to make a decision, and we're going to make a decision, and then, like all the other ADUAs that we deal with around the lake, if neighbors come to an agreement that's different than what we said, they come to us with the diagram and show it to us, and then we can decide. But otherwise, we're just kicking it down the road.
I would just say there's really not much room for agreement because you're voting on what the city wants in the first place, so why should they ever bend?
Yeah.
Right. There's no negotiating.
It's just Wax the White Bear presented any information for us to look at?
No.
Yeah, we did. It was your survey.
What should, I guess, how do we factor in their wishes?
Well, and here, there's the other side. We finally just figured out Whitaker, too, like today.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that helps. That's half of it. So if we can figure out the other side, I do think it's proper to give it some time. Like just, and I'm not saying a month, I'm saying give it 7 days.
Well, and what the attorney's letter proposes is to wait till November.
Yeah, and that's not going to happen. We got to get something now.
Who knows? I mean, they can always come back with something different, right? But I think it is important to give these guys a chance to engage because it's really going to affect where the docks can go in. I don't know if they're set yet because I haven't been down to the bay for probably a couple weeks, but where that last dock is and how long it can be is going to be directly related to what they can come up with. So set a line, set a triggering date, and if you don't see anything before that date, then that becomes the line.
So we would make a decision tonight what to do, and it would trigger in 7 days.
Correct. Or 10 days, whatever you guys feel is appropriate.
Well, like Darren said.
Here's the other thing. I don't think we ever ducks in a row. Like Mark brings up a good point. There's a resident there in your ADUA. So what are we going to do with that?
Well, that's an issue we'll have to deal with. But that's a separate issue.
But so we're going to do one thing but not the other. Like this is where it's like if we don't define what that ADUA is.
There's no complaint about that. If there is a complaint, we can address it, right?
No, how you can complain about one dock but not the other dock?
That's what they're saying.
Yeah.
Well, is it? Or do you want everybody out of your ADUA? Sorry.
Just remind us that we should all be respectful.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
All the time.
Sorry. Yep, I don't.
Sorry about that, Lindy.
This got brought up from last November when we were talking about permits. As y'all know, I'm fairly new here. Had I looked at that doc, I would probably say, let's work out an agreement, because that's how I operate. I haven't looked at that doc. The complaint that I made was in November about docks of White Bear. I will submit another complaint if you all would like.
No. I don't
about
want any
the
more
other one.
complaints. No.
Motion and a second. We're still in discussion. Is there any further discussion? Diane?
What's the motion?
The motion is to set the ADUA boundary between the tract properties and the Lions Park as proposed by the city in this drawing. So basically, we say as proposed by the city, but the reality is it's a line that's perpendicular from the shore at that particular point, and that's not an unusual way, I think, to look at it. The city of White Bear Lakes.
On the board? But were you going to put that amendment on?
Yeah, well, I'm still thinking about that as the maker of the motion.
May I ask
Yeah.
one more? That just shows one of your docks. Are other of your docks affected by this?
That's what I'd like to find out.
And how, could you
I
fit?
think it is. And if you're going to do that,
The second one would be too.
Everybody's dock all the way down the bay. The cities, Keys, DFW, because that's what that other one does. This one just screws me.
Can you fit your 240
That's what I'd like
boats?
to talk.
Can you fit your 200?
I don't know.
Lindy, you
Susie, just a
I'm
second.
sorry.
Mark?
Yeah, I'm still confused about this drawing that you submitted. It seems to respect the proposed ADUA line by the city. Or near to it.
That was the start. It's version 1. We're on to version 2 or possibly 3. Nothing's defined, so that's the confusion on that
But
one.
then my second comment would be I'm uncomfortable supporting this motion until we can look at a proposed diagram.
Nothing's going to be omitted.
We asked for an updated diagram in November, and Docks White Bear were basically non-responsive for, 5 months? 6 months? 5 months? We didn't receive anything back. Their attorney came to the March meeting and talked with the LUC at length, 25 minutes. And then, we followed our procedures. And then Mr. McGoldrick came and spoke uninvited at our April meeting, and where we are. We tried to work with Docks White Bear Lake. We let them know, hey, you need to be 240 slips, you need to be within 300 feet, and they have never provided a document like that, or diagram to show us. So we're at a point where it appears that Docks of White Bear Lake is intending to install their docks the way that they have historically, and that's, more than 240 slips. They don't have a permit to operate in the marina or in Commercial Bay, and so it's difficult. Okay, any further?
Yeah, will we accept anything that the Docks of White Bear and the city agree to, as long as it meets our two requirements of 240 slips and 300 feet?
That's my opinion, but we tried to, again, we tried since the last meeting to get the parties together, and only Monday were Docks of White Bear Lake able to make somebody available, and their attorney. Right, that was Monday? Mm-hmm. Monday of this week.
Okay.
Mike? Sorry, Susie.
So recently we got an email from Brian. I think Brian sent it out, and it shows the dock configuration. Although the Whitaker Street, it crosses over the Whitaker Street line, but it does respect the perpendicular line that the motion is about. So he can do it. He can do it. And so that's why I think it's fair for both. The park gets the visibility, and you get to stay within your ADUA. That figure there. Although the docks are a little bit long, but That respects the perpendicular line.
But it doesn't work.
Okay.
On the, I think Mike's making the point that on the Lions Park.
Lindy and I are going to try.
What?
Because it goes right in the other docks. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm good with it encroaching somewhat into Lions Park. I would try.
Yeah. Darren? Nothing?
I like the proposal. I like a trigger.
And
7 days.
Okay, so, and Meredith?
I'm not saying that city line is unfair, but I think if we choose the line proposed by the city doesn't have a real reason to negotiate at all. But I'm not saying that that line isn't fair. It might be fair, but I just think there needs to be a reason for the city to come to the negotiation.
Yeah, well, I think that we, okay, Susie?
I think we've already heard Lindy say she would negotiate that she would allow some of that to be used in Lions Park. So she's saying that she would do that, which leads to me to believe she's willing to negotiate.
Yeah.
So I think that idea that she will not negotiate is kind of a moot point.
Okay. Brian?
I tried, Brian.
Thanks, Brian. Darren?
I'll say very fair point, Meredith. I believe the Docks of White Bear failed to show up for a negotiation on April 20th and April 21st when we tried to facilitate that. So there was effort made. So it's kind of, are we going to reward them for not even working with us for 6 months, going on 7? So it's tough. That we're in a tough position. Obviously, I feel we have to make a decision, or we just kick the can down the road.
We didn't know about this until April and had the survey.
Brian, just a
And that's when
second.
you put it up there.
It's Scott.
6 months.
Scott?
This diagram we're looking at that we got from Docks of White Bear, okay, it looks like it meets the line on the south because they've shortened that dock in this diagram. However, on the other side, it's still sticking out what we think are the property line extensions of the ADUA and Whitaker Street.
But we already, in the LUC, and we already figured out a plan on the Whitaker side, so we're fine on the, we have on the Whitaker side. We're in
That'll
good
come
shape.
up in the LUC report,
Yeah.
okay?
So the big thing is just figuring out Lions Park. And I have one more thing to say. I'm really concerned about that other resident. If we're going to do it for one and not the other, that puts us in a very bad position, I think.
Yeah, and I don't know that it's necessarily the case that we're doing it for one and not the other.
Well, we can't. It's just
if the city brings forth a
we're going to
complaint,
if we're going to force ADUAs, it's got to be the same for everybody.
Yeah.
And that's where it's like if you take it one by one, we're putting ourselves, I think, in a bad spot. I didn't see that dock at all. It just feels weird.
There isn't a complaint.
Yeah, there's no complaint.
Mike?
Excuse me. Go ahead.
Mike?
You know, it seems like we're talking about AUDAs only used for putting boats in. And every property owner has a right to an ADUA, but they don't have to put boats in it. They can enjoy it, and that's equal usage as having it crammed with boats. It's the same. They're using 100% of what they have a right to. And I mean, but you know, the geese come in there, the ducks come in there. If it's opened up, more will come in. People can see out into it that are using the park that don't live on the lake that want to come and look at the lake.
Mike, I totally. My point is, if we're going to enforce encroaching structures on somebody's ADUAs, which is part of our ordinance, right?
Yeah.
If we have a structure that goes into somebody's ADUA, we do not allow that, right? That dock is in their ADUA.
Yes.
So if
But
we
that
don't,
dock owner has not been notified.
well, he doesn't know it. But like here, if we're going to follow our rules, we have to follow the rules for everybody. That's what I'm concerned about. I did not see that dock where I'm like, if it was just the one, I'd be like, huh. But that guy doesn't even know about it. And like if we're to enforce the ordinance that we have from the LUC and our perspective, now we're picking one or the other. I'm not going to do that.
There's probably 500 unspoken
I get
ADUA
it, but
infringements on the
we're
lake.
taking the one that we're discussing, which is like the most important one to figure out with this commercial bay business, right?
Well, there's only
There's
one
no
being
complaint
complained about.
Complaints don't dictate what a structure is in an ADUA, though. An ADUA is an ADUA. In our ordinance says we can't put a mooring, a dock, or any structure in somebody else's ADUA, right? Structure.
There's no complaint, so it kind of becomes.
It doesn't matter on the complaint.
Like the chair would
Up to the
say,
site owner.
this is a reactive
Site
order.
owner.
It's not the way you read that ordinance.
No, but I think it is important to remember that the board has been reactive. You know, we don't go out into the lake looking for issues, but if issues are brought to our attention, then we deal with them. This has been brought to our attention, and so it's incumbent on us.
A rule and an ordinance.
Excuse me, Chris. I'll finish, and then you can go.
Okay.
It's incumbent upon us to look at this because an issue has been raised. And on the other side, the one that you're so concerned about on the, the long dock that seems to encroach on the other, let's say the other side of the Lions Park ADUA, yeah, maybe the board needs to do something about that. But that's not what the discussion is tonight. And if a complaint or an issue is brought forward, well, then the board would deal with it. And anybody, I think, I don't know. I mean, I guess if you wanted to bring that complaint forward, then the board would look at it. I don't know.
Like if a complaint has to come to enforce a regulation in our ordinance?
In the way that the board has operated in the past is we've been reactive. So if people are getting along and everything's good, we don't go meddling.
Okay.
Because there are some parts of the lake like
this.
this.
It's a weird way to govern.
That are
really
very difficult.
I just don't think that's fair at all.
Okay, well, you have a vote.
Yep.
Any further discussion? Alan?
I know you still have to cover the time box issue, but just before you take the vote, because of the nature of the landlord, I think it's incumbent upon the White Bear representatives to not vote on this issue. Just because of the conflict of interest, the perceived conflict of interest.
Okay.
So I think you still have enough votes to make a clear decision, but it's really hard when it's people that are appointed by the person who's in front of you. So my recommendation.
Okay. Lindy.
I was just going, I'm scared to even say it right now, but I was just going to add that the other dock, the residential dock, if it is also covered in swamp area. I have no use, I can't use that portion of my ADUA. So if this were an aerial, you would see that is really unusable lake area.
Okay. I guess it doesn't matter if it's swamp, sand, ice. An ADUA that is your ADUA and it's in it.
Okay, Mark?
So I understand the duty of the board is to define the ADUA in these points of conflict.
Found it.
Although the preferred approach is for the parties to work out an agreement on their own. Is another forcing function to do enforcement action against docks of White Bear? So that would force them to negotiate and find a settled agreement with the city?
You know, I don't know what else we do. I mean, I think the reality right now is that it seems Tract Properties is illegally operating a marina in Commercial Bay because they haven't obtained the appropriate permits. And historically, well, anyway, no, I don't know of any other enforcement. Alan, do you know of any way?
Our ordinances allow for a daily fine or something?
Yes, $1,700. Seven?
Effectively, you could charge a misdemeanor a day. And that's defined in our statutes as $700, but in state law it's $1,000 a day and 90 days in jail is a misdemeanor sentence.
So we have that avenue available. But again, Docks White Bear is operating without a permit. Mike?
Given Alan's comment, I haven't thought about it that way, being appointed, and that's all abstain from voting.
Okay, so Mike, I think, made the second on the motion. So I would say if you're abstaining, then we don't have a valid second.
I'll second.
It doesn't. Someone else will. That's fine.
Okay, so Darren just seconded. So we do have a second, and the motion is the motion is still to identify the ADUA this way, and I will amend the motion to give them a 10-day window to work out some agreement with them between themselves. and then bring that to the board. Darren, is that okay with you?
Yeah, I just state May 26th at 11:59 p.m.
Okay.
Maybe a.m. for Sherry's sake.
By the 26th then.
The previous night.
And I think Mark's comment is worth exploring.
Yeah, and so let's talk about that.
Well, you were.
I was going to, if we're amending the motion, I was going to perhaps discuss what is exactly requested at that time. Is it an updated permit? Or
It'd be an agreement on the ADUA.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they would.
It's how that ADUA is going to be respected by both parties.
Yeah, so the two parties would get together. They would come up with something that's the same or different than we're proposing. They would come to us, or they would notify Sherry, and Sherry would pass it around. And as long as the board doesn't see any critical problems with it, then I think the board would be open to letting the two property owners define where that ADUA boundary is. But they don't have that agreement now, and so the board, again, as time goes on, the docks and the boats are going to get more entrenched there, and so it seems like now is the time to take action. Chris?
And just two details on that. It would be a diagram of docks at 300 feet, like we've said, and boats slips at 240.
With the application, yeah, and agreed that's a separate issue. Docks of White Bear still needs to come forth with a permit application that meets our requirements, and they haven't, that I've seen anyway. Yep. But that's right. That's another issue.
I'm just trying to get to the 10 days. If those things aren't met, then what happens?
Well, yeah. So all we're doing, all the 10 days does is define the ADUA boundary.
Yeah.
Docks,
the boundary.
Yep. Docks of White Bear.
Cool.
No.
So we do the boundary. 10 days. What has to happen? Then for the rest for the diagram of the permit?
So Docks of White Bear needs to come forward with a permit application that meets the requirements that we let them know last November. But that's a separate issue. The ADUA boundary will be identified, and until Docks of White Bear comes forward with a permit application that's the 240 slips within the 300 feet, then they're operating without a permit.
I turned that in. What happened to it? I turned my deal in back in November. You didn't like what I asked, and then I turned in a whole packet of different drawings that we had. You had some more today.
If you have a drawing, then we should pick one and just say what it is. But we don't, none of the drawings will hold true because we haven't even defined what this ADUA is on their side. That's the problem.
And they're all for 200. They're all for.
No, I'm sure you, here's the problem is I'm sure you've turned in things, but I imagine every one of those had the center of the lake at the Lions Park.
And
correct?
260 slips.
We're not voting on that, right?
No.
No, I'm just saying. I'm just trying to get the details for everybody. So, here, if we get through this and you vote on it,
Going to Center Lake, how come it has to be that line?
This is not a discussion with the audience.
Hey, so, Chris, I think to your point, two separate issues. One is the ADUA line between Lions Park and Docks of White Bear Lake. The second is the permit that Docks of White Bear Lake needs to operate their marina in White Bear in Commercial Bay. The first item, the ADUA boundary, is what we're voting on now. That's the motion. The second item, the permit, that's something that we're still waiting on from Docks of White Bear Lake.
And that has to come ASAP.
Well, they're operating a marina legally, so. Yeah, you don't have the permit. The Docks of White Bear Lake, is that, excuse me, Brian. Excuse me, Brian. Alan, if somebody's operating a marina in Commercial Bay without a permit from us, is referring to that as illegal, is that appropriate or not appropriate?
No, it's operating without a permit. So under Ordinance 5, if you're going to be in Commercial Bay, you have to have a conditional use permit. That's why they come back every year. It's not an ongoing thing because the lake changes. So that's why it's important, I think, to have this time box, as Chris calls it, because I don't think reasonably you can expect an operator to submit something showing how many slips they're going to have and where until that soft edge, is what I would call it now, is defined, because it's really going to define what he can do at that end, right?
Well, we turned in going out when it has historically been. She's made a complaint. You're saying, well, the complaint overrides, so you no longer have a permit. And that's where my argument is.
And
It's
that's where
been
they're at.
historically the same.
And that's where they're at, saying,
And
this is
so
where we're
she's
going to
got a
put it.
complaint, so now you don't have a permit.
No,
So you should feel lucky you've been allowed to operate where they didn't want you to operate for 40 years.
Well, we should feel lucky they can park in our lot.
I think the reality is that the board hasn't approved a permit for Docks White Bear Lake to operate in 2023.
And I think you provisionally did in November, but it was incumbent upon lowering the slip count down to 240 and
300 feet on the dock.
I think the request was, show us that diagram and you're good, and that hasn't happened.
Right, so they're operating without a permit.
No, we did what was requested of us. We turned in the diagram.
With the 240 slip?
60 boats, so.
240.
260.
60.
Well, it says 260, you just take off 20.
Well, that's what you asked for.
Mark, yeah, so let's move on. So we have a,
We wanted to share them all.
deal with that at the June meeting.
Permitted, just as a drawing that meets the requirements that were passed.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second, and the motion has been amended to include a 10-day window for the two parties to come to an agreement, and that's the motion and the second. Any further discussion? Okay, and
Frame for that.
yeah, the
a
10
time.
days. Yep, 10 days.
May 26th at.
Close the business.
Yeah, close the business, that's fine. Is that okay
5
with
p.m.
Is that okay with you, close the business?
5 p.m. I don't want to work a half an hour later.
When do you quit? Noon?
Darren,
4:30.
as the second to the motion, is that okay?
City hours, man.
Yeah.
And close
Well,
business?
I think we should put a time on it.
Yeah.
Well, can you make?
My question before you vote. That line, I would assume, then needs to be defined by a surveyor.
Right.
So, I'm not gonna have a legal document drafted in 10 days until a surveyor would get out there and.
I mean, I just disagree with that completely. You know, it's just, you don't even give me a chance.
I think whatever needs to get done by agreement should have a diagram, and I guess do the best you can with a marker. I mean, we've got our official surveys that you should use as the template, and if however that swings, we can eyeball it, right? I mean,
I eyeball it off that dock. If you guys like walk out there and feel comfortable where it lines up, like count the number of slips up and say, here's where we think it is. If that works, right?
Right. Something to make it so that everyone knows the rules of engagement.
I just want to be clear, because we won't have that in 10 days.
Yeah, I think that what we're looking for is the two parties to notify the board that you've reached some agreement is what we're looking for in the 10 days. Okay, that's the motion and the second. Thanks, everybody, for your discussion. So, Scott, are you going to abstain as well?
If I'm advised by council to abstain, I will do that.
That's just my opinion.
Okay.
We have enough of a quorum here.
Yep, to carry the vote, or to have the vote. Okay, so I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye. Can I actually have a hand raised? for
Yep.
that?
Okay, so let's raise our hands. All those in favor of the vote, raise your hand, or the motion, raise your hand. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4.
Diane.
Opposed, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Motion fails.
Motion fails. Okay, motion failed. So I guess do your best to come to some agreement, and we'll bring it up again at our June meeting, maybe.
Ryan, does that require a special meeting perhaps? Since, you're going to be, some of the docks are going to be put in. It seems like if you put them in, you're going to have to take them out at the.
Can we try to do
Hey,
something sooner than later?
Chris, Susie was talking.
It seems like a special meeting should be called in a week to 10 days so that this issue can be finalized.
Well, there's no window on it now because that was part of the motion. So
True.
The board has decided at this point to just leave it to in my estimation, to just leave it to the parties to try to figure it out.
The problem is I don't know where my ADUA is. Because I don't.
There's now one defined. You guys have to figure out what that agreement is on that ADUA. If you don't, we'll come and make that decision.
Chris, that's what they asked us to do tonight.
That's what we tried to do tonight.
Like here, we have it's like you guys could figure it out, but like I'm not going to take one side and say that's it. Like, you guys should have the discussion, and if you can't do it, I would hope you could.
And we've been trying to help for 6 months.
Yeah, but it's one-sided. It doesn't. And it
because
doesn't.
one side is choosing not to
The biggest thing
engage.
for me is that other doc, and it just blows my mind that we don't abide.
One side finally engaged today. It's from I don't know.
So do we want to have another motion where it's, like, they come back to us in 10 days?
I'm just curious.
Or a fine go either way?
Just a second, Chris. Alan?
Maybe a motion should be floated instead of just this back and forth from someone who didn't vote on the last motion. So
Yeah, would somebody like to make a motion?
whatever.
Meredith?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to choose the midpoint between these two lines so both parties have an equal, willingness to negotiate. So it's not the exact line the city wants. It's not the exact line Doxa White Bear wants. It's something right in the center of those two.
This midpoint?
Yep, start at that midpoint and come back to us within 10 days.
And split those two lines?
Yep.
Okay, that's a motion. I'll second that motion. So we have a motion and a second to identify the ADUA boundary as the split between those two lines and a 10-day window for the parties to come to an agreement and notify us to that effect. Is that?
Otherwise, that's the line. And since this is just being recorded, you should probably reference that line a little bit more than between the two lines. Yeah. So I would suggest that we call it the line, basically the splitting the lower property line that goes to the center of the lake and the barbed wire line that was presented in the proposal from the city. Yep. Basically the midpoint between those two.
Okay, so that's the motion and the second. Any discussion?
At any time, our executive committee can call a special meeting if it's appropriate, if they think it's appropriate.
I think it's the chair can call the meeting. So I can call the meeting if it's appropriate.
Yeah. So we go 10 days, see where we are, and then you can make the call. One thing I'm concerned about is, well, of course, we talk about fairness to these two parties. There are like 200-some people who have boat slip reservations at the docks of White Bear, plus all the other, marina docks. In terms of fairness to them, they want to put their boats in now by Memorial Day. They can operate an illegal marina, and people can pay for slips. Do we care?
No, yeah, of course we care, and we're looking into what legal action we can take at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion?
I'm just wondering why we can't go ahead and establish that line tonight.
We are.
We are. We're just giving them 10 days to come back to us with an agreement between them of something that's different.
Otherwise, that line that we're voting on is established.
Just that. Okay.
Okay, any more discussion? Okay, I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Call the abstentions too.
And all those opposed, same sign. Any abstentions?
Abstain.
Did I cover that well?
Is that on the record?
Mike Pronto and Scott Costello, the city's representatives, have abstained on this vote. Okay, that passes. Good luck. Okay, here we go. Next item on the agenda, E.G. Rudd and Sons Survey Services Update. So Sherry has been corresponding. The executive committee asked Sherry to contact E.G. Rudd and ask them about assisting us in confirming in Commercial Bay that all the docks are within their appointed ADUAs. So E.G. Rudd came back and said that would be about $1,000 to come out and to confirm all that. Another thing that they said was that to set the ordinary high water level mark, that they would drill into rock with a small stainless steel nail, 3/8 to 1/2 inch head with a divot in the middle. This is the kind that goes into concrete. So basically they would identify the ADUA with that type of a thing. So anybody that wanted to go out and find, or I'm sorry, they would define the ordinary high water level with a pin that's driven into the rock. And anytime anybody wanted to come out and find the ordinary high water level, they would have those marks or those nails, I guess, to find the ordinary high water level. And I think that's the important stuff. So I'll make a motion to approve up to $1,000 to have the survey company come back out and confirm that all the docks are within their ADUAs once the docks are in.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I would like to add language. I don't know how we do this, but those coordinates are foreign to us or unusable 300 feet out. Apparently they can only be used by some sort of measurement system that the Ramsey County uses. They don't comply with Google Maps or anything of that sort. So whatever they need to do, if it's a 15-minute session teaching someone how to use it, that's fine. If it's writing in Google Maps coordinates, that's great. But right now, those coordinates are useless.
Okay, that's another thing that Sherry had discussed with E.G. Rudd. I just didn't know that it would be appropriate for tonight, but thanks for bringing it up. So it goes to converting the Ramsey County coordinate system into a Google Maps GPS coordinates. And what the survey company told Sherry is it's a pain to do, but can be done. And he didn't know what the costs of this were. So I think that what might be appropriate for that item is to have Sherry request a cost estimate to convert those coordinates, and then we can see what we're looking at, and then we can make that decision.
Oh, yeah, I wasn't sure if we could include it in this expense or not, but thank you for clarifying. Sorry.
Thanks for raising the issue, Darren. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve up to $1,000 for the surveyor to come back out and confirm that all the docks are within the appointed ADUAs. Any further discussion? Meredith?
I just have a question. Were they going to offset the stainless steel nails from the ordinary high water level, or we had some discussion on that? What did they come to a conclusion what would work best?
And I don't know the answer, but do you know the answer?
I only assume that if it's in the rock area, that's what they're going to use. And that's all he recommended.
We talked about doing it tactfully, right?
Yeah, I think that where that ended up was that we would leave it to the surveyor to, they need to locate the ordinary high water level line, and they're talking about driving into rock, drilling and driving into rock. So I think that they will try to put it in at the ordinary high water level wherever they can, the actual ordinary high water level. And if they can't, I suppose they'll identify an offset. Mark?
After 10 days from now, will all ADUAs in Commercial Bay be defined?
All the ADUAs within Commercial Bay are defined, except for this one, the Docks White Bear and the Lions Park.
Yeah, now in that case, can they, I assume Rudd can update their database to show the if it is a perpendicular to some, to the high water line, to the tangent of that, that they could draw that in their maps.
True. Yeah, and I think that would be something that would be updated for next year. I'm not sure how we'll handle that, but certainly they could.
Yeah.
I think if we, if they're okay, so it's a good question. If they're waiting until the docks are going to all be installed anyway before they come out and confirm, by then, that's not maybe going to be within the 10 days, and we can ask them to wait until after the 10 days. And you tell me if I misspeak, please. We can tell them to wait until after the 10 days, and then we could also ask them to identify that line on the drawing for us and give us some coordinates on that line. Either the line that the board has voted on tonight or some boundary that the two parties are both amenable to. Sherry.
So I had mentioned that he's tentatively going to, on March 25th, install the markers.
May 25th?
Yes.
Okay. So that's just within.
And I need to confirm that with him, so I guess we need to decide.
Yeah, so let's, the difficulty here is we know the $1,000 because they provided that, but to add this other line, maybe that's some additional funds. I doubt that that's more than $1,000. So maybe we can ask them to hold off coming out and confirming the docks and putting in the ordinary high water level markers until after the 10 days. So we know either it's an agreed upon line or it's the line that we've defined, and ask them to put that into their drawing for us and provide the coordinates of that line. And because that will likely cost us a little more money, I would like to amend the motion to approve up to $2,000 to come out and check on the dock lengths and also to identify the ADUA boundary between those two properties. And I can't remember who the second was.
Me, second.
Susie, are you okay with that amendment? Okay, so really the motion in front of us right now is to allow or to authorize $2,000, up to $2,000 for the survey company to come out and do that work, to confirm that the docks are in the ADUAs and to identify for us on a sheet of paper what that boundary looks like between Docks of White Bear and Lions Park. Okay. So we have a motion and a second on that. Any further discussion?
For purposes of the motion, you should put in there that it's any time after 10 days. And as a practical matter, in the springtime, you're probably not going to get a survey crew out there. I mean, if there's one thing surveyors are right now, it's busy. So
okay, so
being able to do it within the next 10 days is probably zero.
Okay, so I'll amend the motion to to request that the surveyors come out after 26th. Susie, you okay with that?
I'm fine with that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you.
Brian, should I ask them to set a date after that? I mean, get a solid date for us?
Yeah, that'd be great. Okay, next item on the agenda, 4955 Lake Avenue, dock issue update. Mark Gans.
Oh, yes. Chris has been in contact with them, but basically, and feel free to chime in, but the owner said that they've removed and what's in there now currently can be removed before ice out. So the LUC advises that we send them a letter in October saying that all the dock must be removed by November 1st and not wait for the chance for it to go ice out. And now that, Chris and Sherry have figured out who we can contact, we have their contacts now. The hardest problem before was the person that owns the property lives in Indonesia, and we were having trouble contacting who was.
So it's his brother Mark who's like the caretaker. He's like, I pulled that dock in and out, and I'm like, well, I haven't seen it change in 20 years, but besides the point. And he's like, we're going to use it this year, and it will be removed by winter. So if that's the case, we'll go with it, and we'll see how it looks here in October.
Okay, so that's still in the LUC's hands?
Yeah.
All right. Any questions on that? Thank you, Mark and Chris. Mm-hmm. Next item on the agenda, Executive Committee. The Executive Committee did meet, and generally we talked about the ADUA boundary between Docks of White Bear and Lions Park, and we talked about the survey having a survey company come back out and confirm that all the docks were within their ADUA once they were installed. We also discussed, and maybe you'll remember from the April meeting, the Manitou Clothing Company, their offer to provide donation to the board or to the Conservation District, and they requested the use of the White Bear Lake Conservation District logo on their website and social media, as these are groups that we support, something like that. And the executive committee made the decision that in this situation it would be okay for them to do that. But and Sherry has advised them of that fact. But then we also think that the board ought to develop a policy for how we allow the use of our logo. And so that will be handled in an upcoming meeting.
Make a comment?
What's that?
Can I comment on that?
Yeah, please.
Obviously, this is new to us, and perhaps this is already in place, but I would encourage maybe they have to run everything by Sherry just so she can see the logo in use for now until we get a policy in place. Obviously, if they make a distasteful shirt and throw our logo on it, we probably don't want that. Don't think that'll happen, but just have at least one person look at it. Or you, or me.
Yeah, and I agree, and that's something that the committee was concerned about, and so we asked Sherry to contact them and have them confirm how they intended to use the logo, and they're not intending to put it on any clothing. But your point's a good one, and that's really why the board, I think, needs to come up with a policy.
Yeah, right.
Okay, Sherry.
I want to mention that the logo will be on just the website and social media, plus we reserve the right to have them stop using the logo.
Okay. Okay. Any questions on the executive committee report? Okay. Next. Lake Quality Committee, Mike.
We sent out the swimmer's ditch letter to the communities that have public beaches, and what that is, I think it's in your packet also, is that we pay for the first treatment if swimmer's ditch is identified at one of the beaches. It's up to the cities to decide if they want to treat or not. We pay for the first treatment, which usually is enough to carry it through the summer. So it's kind of a good thing that we do. Lake level, the lake has maintained, it's 922.87. 922.87, so it's maintained its level, and it's actually up 1.25 inches from last month.
And what does that compare to last year?
Today. Pardon me?
What does that compare to last year?
It's down about 1 foot from last year.
Thank you.
But it's not, it was higher last year. Lake temperature is 58 degrees. Last year it was 62 degrees, so it's kind of chilly yet, but it'll warm up. And then I'll request a bid for Eurasian water milfoil treatment from Lake Management. We'll have that next month to look at that and decide. That's it.
Any questions for Mike? Thank you, Mike. Next, Lake Utilization Committee, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. East Shore Dock Association is a scratch. Hollywood Products Fireworks, this is something, they were going to have this party a couple years ago. All their ducks in a row, everything lined up, and COVID hit, so now they want to have their party. Again, all their ducks in a row, insurance, sheriffs, city have all checked off. So the LUC moved to approve, and I so move.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I'm going to bring up a point that the LUC may have missed is I don't think they have their Washington County Sheriff's permit. It's for a different event, different date. Don't know if that's clerical error. Page 27 in our packet. I don't know if that's if we want to do a contingency or what, but that's the day event for that is June 25th. They're first page of the application is July 8th. Obviously, the sheriff's permit says June 25th, 2022. So.
Right, so they just used their same, they just didn't change theirs.
Yeah. So.
What would you like? Would you like me to contact Washington County and have them change the date from July 25th, 2022 to, or June 25th, 2022 to the 8th?
It might be appropriate for you to amend the motion to make it contingent on them providing an updated letter from the Washington County Sheriff's Office.
Gotcha.
If you want to do
that. Yes. Although on the second page behind that, permittive event, the water surface application does have the correct date. So yeah, I can go to them.
It's this year.
So do you want to amend your motion that way, Mark, to make it contingent on them providing an updated letter from Washington County?
Yes, I would like to make it contingent on an updated permit for event held on waters of Washington County from the Washington County Sheriff's Department for the correct date.
And is the second okay with that amendment? Okay. So the motion and a second to approve with contingent on them providing the updated Washington County document. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Same sign. Okay, that passes.
Okay. Docks of White Bear Lake status, I think we've already gone through. And then the next one that was added at the beginning of the meeting was tallies. Initially, we spoke with tallies, and the 15-foot setback seemed to be reasonable. And at first, that's the way it was going to go. And then some more discussion came. And at the time, it sounded like both parties would be willing to do the same thing that abutting marinas do in the other parts of the marina, or some do, is to put the two docks out instead of having to worry about one go this way and one go straight out, is just put them together, and then nobody can encroach on the ADUA. So that's where it was left off for the two parties to go. Otherwise, what was approved for Tallies, his revised drawing was approved with the 15-foot setback on the Whitaker.
Yeah. We had some confusion initially on the permit. We approved it, and we said conditionally changes because it was on the property line. We had an updated diagram, and through changing the materials, we assumed it was 30 feet. Once we got back together, we eliminated that confusion, and we're like, let's just start over, and this is the diagram that we're going off of for the permit.
So 15-foot
15
setback.
feet setback from that property line.
From the property line.
And is there a motion in here anywhere?
That's what we moved to approve, but like I said, the parties also said they might be able to get their heads together, like I said, just to throw the two docks and butt them together, so there's no worry about who's crossing over into other people's ADUAs.
So put it this way, this is our first step, like just we want to approve this diagram, but we're also going to work with Brian and Keith on a possibility based on what Keith comes up with his diagram where those docks may just butt up on the property line. We may not get that done this year, but we're going to try to see if there's an agreement there to make some better space there where that line on Whitaker would be, they'd butt those docks right up against it, and then they're like, there's no question about anything, and Keith gets some more space, works out for Brian, and they can kind of close that. But we're going to try to do that.
But currently, that diagram of the 140-foot length on the south dock at 15-foot setback from the Whitaker property line.
Okay, so is there a motion?
That's my motion.
Motion to approve Tally's amended diagram.
Amended diagram.
Okay, and is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? And I'll just start. So this 15-foot setback, is the idea that boats come in and tie up on the south side of that?
Yes.
Yes.
And 15 feet, is that enough room for that boat then to maneuver out of there without encroaching into the other ADUA?
No.
We did have a discussion, and the two parties were in agreement that that would work.
Because the movement in and out the two parties are okay with people being in the shared ADUA? Navigational, thank you. Okay.
And then Keith's also like he's going to have. We've talked about the sheriff. There's 2 multiple boats. The sheriff's going to come and tell him you can't have multiple pontoons based on that issue we had last year.
Right.
And Keith said he'd have his employees do their best to make sure that that's followed also.
Okay. And would you be open to a friendly amendment to your motion to memorialize in the permit that it can only be 1 boat wide tied up there? And the benefit of that, from my perspective, is then we can notify Ramsey County sheriffs, and then if they come out and see that there are 2, they can issue the citation. Because last year, and sorry, Keith, last year they had a lot of difficulty controlling the number of.
And here's I could go either way. It just varies. So let's say Keith moves it over 25 feet, right? He's still within his rules. If you have moored boats, if you're within your, width, you can do that. Now, if he's at 15 feet and a pontoon doubles up, he's moored over the line and you have to pull it out.
Right.
So I kind of like that rule to enforce that. I could go either way, but I think these guys are going to be able to figure it out where those docks come together, and it's not going to be an issue, where there won't be any moored boats like in between. They'll be on each side.
Yeah. And so are you open to that friendly amendment, assuming that, it's possible that those 2 parties are not able to come to an agreement?
How about we check that if we cross that bridge? Would you take that?
Well, it's your motion. It's your motion.
How about you can't park in somebody else's ADUA? You can't tie off in somebody else's ADUA.
Right, and what I'm hoping is that we can come up with something that's very clear for the Ramsey County Sheriff's Department.
Well, it's in our ordinance. Like, you can't moor a boat outside your ADUA. So if there's a boat that's moored out that 15 feet, if they double up, that's illegal.
Right, and again, I'm hoping that we can make it easy on the Ramsey County Sheriff's Department. If we accept that it's 15 feet and we accept that 2 boats cannot be moored together in that 15-foot distance, is it reasonable for us to say, okay, well, then it can only be 1 boat?
How about this? In its current configuration for 2023, it can be only 1 boat.
The south side of
on
the
south side
dock.
of the commercial dock.
So if you're open to that friendly amendment.
So I'd like
That
to
way-
make an amendment to say that on the south dock of Tallies, only 1 boat is allowed to tie up on the south side. No other boat is allowed to tie up alongside of it.
For the 2023 configuration.
Well, it's annual.
Yeah, perfect.
Are you okay as the second with that amendment?
Yeah, I'll second that. It's because it's the way it is. The rules will be violated if you double up the boats anyways with the distance.
Okay, good. So we have a motion and a second. Keith.
Just one quick statement. 1 boat or 1 boat wide? The term was used 1 boat. So that means I can only have 1 boat on that side, or we're going 1 boat wide.
Well,
That's what we understand is 1 boat wide.
I would say here, make it 1 boat that fits within 15 feet. Like, you could have, some of these boats vary.
Oh, no.
40 feet.
You got it.
Okay, hold up. Keith, can you come up?
Yes.
Thanks.
He makes a good point.
Can you, just because I'm ignorant, can you explain to me what the difference is between us identifying as 1 boat versus 1 boat wide?
Okay, 140 feet of dock, I can have probably, I'm going to just do quick math, 14 boats. If you're telling me 1, that means I can only have 1 boat. I mean 1 boat tied along, so no rafting.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah,
So,
okay, and
just for
that
clarification.
was my intention, but if that clarifies it to make it 1 boat width wide, that's, okay.
Does that take care of the problem that we had last year with all the boats not being able to get out from docks of White Bear?
We moved 15 feet over because we were on the property line, or Tallies.
year was right on the
Tallies
property
was on
line.
the property line last.
So that will give them enough room, and we won't have them coming back to complain again.
Another 15 feet.
As long as they don't double up, which the motion doesn't allow them to double up.
We will.
Okay, so do we need to restate the motion, or will you restate the motion, Mark? Sorry.
I would like to make a motion to approve the amended drawing for 2023 with the 15-foot setback from the Whitaker property line, with a caveat to say that on the south dock, only one boat width, not length, but width-wise, can tie up on the south dock.
And the motion and second's okay with that? Okay, so that's the motion and the second. Any further discussion? Oh, Meredith.
I had a question. So within that conversation at the LUC, you guys also talked about docks of White Bear being 10 feet off that line. I didn't quite understand that.
So if you look at current or previous permits where they're following the center of the lake, if you look at the dock, how it was last year, it was like 344 or something, it's rough length. But that tip of that dock, you know, where the width of the T, it touched the Whitaker property line. Yeah. Right? Now, we're just saying if that comes back 300 feet, they're probably fine, but we're hoping, like, if it stays in that configuration, if it, you know, that format, give it some buffer there, right? Just so everybody's kind of given some navigational space on both sides.
Yeah.
So it was advice to docks of White Bear to allow for 10 feet.
We agreed that would be
at
it.
the end of their
I think what
ADUA.
will happen is, like, the config may change, but if that dock's there in that config, we said we'd leave it 10 feet from
Will
there.
you ask your question again, Meredith? The one that, because I don't know. What was your question right now?
So during the conversation on this issue at the LUC meeting, there was something mentioned about docks of White Bear being 10 feet off the ADUA line between the two properties further out, like at 300 feet. And I
Yeah,
just
that
didn't
was
quite
that was the
understand it.
docks of White Bear's furthest north dock. If you look at its current state or last year's, really, it touched the property line. And we're just saying, you know what, shift it over if you're going to leave it there, just 10 feet so you get some space, because they have, you know, they have a slip, so that's more, you know, mooring space. But we're like, give it 10, and then they'll work on the diagram.
And this particular item that's being discussed right now, that will be, we will evaluate the updated docks of White Bear configuration once it's submitted.
Yeah.
And that's one criteria that we'll look at is it 10 feet off of that ADUA line? Okay.
Question. Is there going to be some signage to make it perfectly clear that the boaters cannot tie up at the end, but on the side only?
That's not part of the motion.
Should we be adding that to the motion?
And what would the sign do exactly?
It would tell people that they had to do it sideways rather than going forward.
No, there's
So
no
that the
side-
boat-
there's no sideways.
Well, it would be parallel, basically, to the dock, right?
Right.
Right, you're head in straight.
Straight.
Yeah.
So you are parallel to the dock rather than perpendicular to the dock.
Right.
Yeah, and they wouldn't be, if they were
Couldn't do it perpendicular.
You couldn't tie off perpendicular.
You'd be
like-
slamming into boats all over.
Yeah. There's no other dock. It's just a straight line. So, like, coming in sideways, you'd have to.
So the only safe way to do it would be to
Straight
parallel
in.
park,
Yeah,
basically.
that's all you can do to that dock.
Yeah.
That way.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second, and we've been having discussion, and everybody understands the motion?
Yep.
Okay, I'll call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes. And, okay, any questions for Mark? Okay.
I just have one quick comment, and it's not about mine, but I was looking at the fireworks that we're going to donate $100 for. They've got the city and the fire department, everybody. Could we get our name on it, too, to say we're sponsoring?
Level.
Okay, we just didn't hit the...
I don't know what that is.
We're not the Gold Club.
We're not the Gold Club. I get it. Thank you. No, I shouldn't have even brought it up. We've got enough going on today.
Yeah, I bet we're not
Okay, moving on.
sponsor at $100.
Lake Education Committee, Scott?
Yes, we are working on a publication with Press Publications. It's going to be called The White Bear Laker, and it's going to be, they're going to figure out ways of distributing this thing. I don't know if it'll be an insert in their paper, but we are planning on mailing it. It'll include a lot of our information. I don't know, Sherry's been doing a lot of our work for us. Thank you. But in terms of addresses and stuff, is that all worked out with them?
So I've given them all the Ramsey County, Washington County addresses. I've asked the dock associations to give me those addresses as well, so maybe half of them did. And so they'll be distributing it. How they will distribute it, I'm not quite sure. I do know, just before the meeting today, he sent me the final copy for us to review. They've made all of the changes. I haven't reviewed it yet. I can give it to you, but I'll send that, hopefully remember tonight. But we need to get back to them. There should be no significant changes at this point. So distribution, I think, is going to be next week.
Yeah, they work really fast.
So is it the intent that they're going to mail some of these to addresses that we provided to them, and then they're also going to distribute in other ways?
They're going to distribute to Lakeshore residents and Dock Association, Homeowner Association members, of which they have the addresses, and then they will put it in other places we talked about. Library, bait shops, don't know any more past that.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so that's going on very fast. That is our primary educational activity this summer. We haven't been asked to participate in anything else that I'm aware of. So that is it. Oh, we have social media update.
Sure. So I'm going to put up something this month on the lake level and temperature. A number of years ago, the board did something really interesting about the Matoska Marsh, and I think I'm going to do a series of posts about the Matoska Marsh and some summer rules updates. And if anyone has anything they'd like me to post, just email me.
Okay, any questions for Scott and Meredith? Okay, thank you. Treasurer's report, Mike?
Treasurer's report. You have the treasurer's report in your packet number 2. And I'm sure you've been studying it all through the meeting, but there was a fair amount of income this month and a fair amount of expenses. So I would like to make a motion that we accept and pay debit card purchase number 6 and checks number 4837 through 4865.
Second.
Thank you.
Motion and a second.
Any questions?
To approve those. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes.
Okay, next thing is the budget worksheet. And I think you received that earlier than tonight.
What?
Yesterday.
Did you send it to people yesterday?
Did you get it? Did I forget? You got it? Okay. People got it.
And if you've looked at it, I don't know if you have any questions or not.
And what we're talking about, just to be clear, are these sheets here, they're budget planning worksheets for 2024 budget.
So very quickly, we look across the line and we kind of look at where we've spent money and where we've received grants, which has only been in the Eurasian water milfoil treatment programs. We know that if we water patrol costs are up to $14,000, so we're going to replicate that for the following year. We have been pretty good at receiving grants, if I get in there quick enough, from the DNR for Eurasian water milfoil treatment. So I haven't budgeted much for that, $15,000. Survey, $3,750. It went up from last year. Phragmites has all been a $900. The first 2 years, I got Anoka County to pay for it, and it was around $900. So we budgeted $1,000. Lake Education, $600 of that is for the website, and the other $3,000, it'll be $1,000 for the paper, and then if you decide to do it again, could be a little more.
Yeah, it's hard to say.
And you still want to have some money to do other projects? So we kind of decided 3,600. Buoys in and out are 500, and sometimes we need to replace chains and anchors, and so there's an extra 100 in there. Swimmer's itch runs around 700. Sometimes it's more than that, so we put in 700. And then we have administrative services and payroll, taxes, got to pay those. Then we have Allen, retainer at 12,000. Then we have insurance. We have professional services. That would be Charisse Letourneau doing the books for us, the accounting, and that's also the city processing our payroll. And that comes to $2,459. Office rent is $1,200. Software info system software projected $300 in expenses in the coming year of 2024. Office supplies, kind of an educated guess. We're at $418. Copy cost, 50. Postage costs, again, kind of an educated guess at $445. Telephone costs are $42.23 a month, so that's $518. Membership in League of Cities is $2,500. Miscellaneous operating expense, who knows, board nameplates, other things that come up, $200, not too much. Cable cost is $600, $50 a month. So with those numbers, we're a little bit below this year's estimate, unless somebody has some projects that I missed or has an idea on something that we didn't discuss. Can discuss it now, or if you think about it during the month. I mentioned it last month also. We can talk about it and add it in. Meredith?
Could we consider redoing our lake use study?
Lake use study is a possibility.
It's supposed to be done every 6 years and not done in longer.
Done it for a while. Trying to think
how would we develop a cost for that? I think it's a good idea, but how would we develop a cost? It's almost like we would have to define the scope of work and go out for proposals and get those proposals back before our June meeting.
Right. Last time we did it was 2021? No, 2001, I mean, 2005?
2005.
And if my memory serves me correctly, which it doesn't always, it was about $4,500.
$4,500?
Yeah.
In 2005. Right.
So if we put a placeholder in there, 10,000?
The note says 23,800 last time we did it.
Oh. See, my memory's not so good. No, that can't be right. 23,000?
Should propose. I could believe that.
Really? Wow. Okay.
Sounds about right. I could believe that.
I guess we can look it up too. We'll look it up.
Okay.
I think it was Steve McComas that did the last one, because I read through it recently, and maybe he could get us a quote fairly quickly since we work with him.
Osgood did it together, yep.
And just for new board members, the idea is that we're looking at this tonight at our May meeting, but we'll finalize it, and we must finalize it at our June meeting. So this idea that we could get a quote within that time frame and insert it into the budget, that's good.
Does the board want me to ask Steve McComas for a quote?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, sure. A lot of shaking heads. Okay.
Yep. All right. Okay, any further questions?
Yes. The other big expense we had this year is the survey. Do we plan to repeat any of that next year?
Good. So we shouldn't have to repeat the whole survey, but we will want some survey effort. So we should maybe $4,000, something like that. You know, the survey was, I think, in the 8,000 to 9,000 range, but they don't have to go to that same level of effort. They don't have to install or identify the ordinary high water level line next time. So it seems like the survey needs that we would have would be, one, please come out and confirm that all the docks are within their ADUA boundaries. So we know that's about $1,000. We may want them to, brush up our diagram or our CAD files in some way, so that will be money. And then there's also this unknown expense about converting the coordinates. So it seems like we should put some dollars in there for surveying. And it's, it's easy to spend money. I don't know what that number should be, maybe $5,000 to $10,000. I don't know what this coordinate transition thing's going to be.
Well, let's say 5,
okay.
And we'll deficit spend if it's more.
Okay.
They got 7,000.
Any other items?
$9.
Meredith?
I had a question. I believe last year we spent extra on boat inspection. Is that an option for us to spend extra on boat inspection at the boat launches?
We discovered what we spent it on. We spent $2,000 on the wake use study, not boat launch inspection. And we had spent money on boat launch inspection years ago when the DNR offered it, but they have not offered it.
I could swear that we spent it with Ramsey County, that we passed money to use with Ramsey County for extra boat launch inspection.
We did, but not last year.
And that's something that we can dig a little more, dig further into, and then bring that to the June meeting. Sherry?
So we did look at that. It was in the minutes last year that it was approved to be spent. However, it was never spent.
Okay.
Do you remember how much that was?
Like $2,400, $2,500.
$2,500.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it never got spent.
So can we, between now and June, can we find out if that is an option for us to pay for additional boat inspection through either Ramsey County or DNR?
I was asked to call Dan to ask him about that, and I haven't had a chance yet. So I can call and find out if that's something they would still like, or where they are at with their boat inspections.
Okay, and would it be appropriate to contact Ramsey County as well, see if they have any, I don't know.
I can, if somebody has a contact they could give me, or I'll figure it out.
The DNR that does at the county beach.
Okay, so let's start with the DNR.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Additional discussion? Okay.
Okay, so we approve a budget at our next meeting.
True.
And then we inform the cities on our levy on the cities at
True.
that point?
After that, yep.
Okay, and I guess we haven't worked that out yet, but I point out that we did reduce the amount, the levy on the cities for this current year to bring our cash reserves back, within policy.
Right.
And we probably have to do some of that next year.
Definitely be reduced to the cities. Yeah, we will use, we will use our general fund to definitely go down.
Yeah.
And just to be clear, so we're identifying how much money we think we need to spend, and then we need to figure out how we're going to pay for that. And obviously, some of the money comes from dock fees, some of the money comes from the member communities, but then for the last few years, some of the money for our 2020 for our next year budget has come out of our reserves. Okay, further discussion on that item?
So in order to charge all our dock fees, we need to have all our permits.
Okay. Okay, any questions for Mike? Okay.
Thank you.
We're close. Board council report?
Aaron Boyd, yeah, I'll be brief because boating season has just taken over. We were going to hopefully get the conservation officer from the DNR here, but again, seeing what was on the menu tonight, it just didn't seem like a good use of time. So that will be an educational process for that officer because they are not from necessarily around here. So White Bear Lake will be a new jurisdiction. So I would guess that they'll work pretty closely with Ramsey County to kind of know the ropes of the lake and whatnot. So if you see a smiling face in the DNR boat, feel free to sidle up and wear your life preserver or whatever else, and make sure you put your beer down. But it should be someone that should be a fresh face on the lake. No citations, and as far as I can tell, nothing bad happened on fishing opener, at least not from Ramsey County's perspective. So no one's told me about any citations. Other than that, just working on the usual stuff that we all have this last month between surveys and Commercial Bay. So I would stand for questions, and if none, I've got the next item too, seeing how long the meeting was going to go. Didn't think anyone would want to hang around for another hour doing photos tonight. So I'm going to push that off until next month. So wear something pretty, as they say, and just it'll be a headshot, so it won't be too dramatic, but it'll be for the website. Fair, Sherry? Okay.
Okay, that's, any questions for Alan?
Do half now?
Okay, we're moving
I've been
on.
here for over 3 hours.
And Sherry, do you have any announcements? Okay. Would anybody like to make a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, we're done. Thanks, everybody. I'll just say thanks, everybody, for the great discussion. You know, that's the way the board should work, and I thought it worked really well tonight. And thanks for your time as well. Right.